Look at that at the bottom. Eggs with fatitude. Is that not cool or what? Hey, welcome to Cyberfied Channel. I'm Jay Hendricks, where redneck meets high tech. We are here to serve you with those areas. So I am still on my road trip, my first inaugural road trip, first of many, I hope. And we are driving up 75. So today's episode is all about energy and nukes. Nukes and energy and nukes. Nukes is like my favorite. Nukes Express Cafe is like my favorite place to go. It's a chain. It's out of Memphis, I think, or Oxford, or somewhere up there. But I miss it down here in Florida. So now that we're going back to Mississippi, we have to find nukes and power. So anyway, come with us. Let's talk about it. So when I first got the Prius, I was enamored with the way that it dispersed energy. So it had this ability. It was one of the first things that I became aware of, was the fact that it can regenerate power. So basically, it takes kinetic energy from the wheels as you're slowing down, and then it regenerates it into the battery. And stores it as potential energy. So it takes kinetic and stores it as potential. Well, this system, this also has that ability, which makes sense for electric vehicles. I mean, that's not a new technology. But one of the things that's fascinating about this is just how efficient it is with power. I'm also beginning to notice that my car likes to tell me it's better than me. And we're starting to have an issue. We're going to work through it. We're starting to have an issue because as I look at how I'm spending energy right now, there's these two peaks in the energy chart, and they show how I am heavy-footed, right? When I'm driving, we use too much, but when it's driving, it's much more efficient. What we're going to do today, as we're traveling up, we're going to monitor that power. The other thing that I'm kind of concerned, or I'm noticing, is the math isn't quite adding up. When you see the actual estimate for the mileage, and then you see it'll say you have 277 miles left or something like that. That's an estimate based on a calculated average. It's not absolute. So I have noticed that when I put my foot in it, or I'm driving fast, or I have to pass somebody or something like that, that I use more power. Well, if I was in a car, I would use more gas, right? If I was in an ICE vehicle, I would use more gas. So that's fine, and that makes sense. But what I'm curious about is the variation. In my Prius, it had something called power mode, which it was a Prius, right? It just basically injected the hamster under the hood with some steroids or something all of a sudden, and then it just bam, powered up the hill, right? It wasn't all that powerful, but it was, you could get around some things. With this thing, most of the time when I'm driving and I want to be efficient, I have it in chill mode, and I have everything kind of lowered out, where I'm trying to use as little power as possible. And we'll see how it goes on this long trip. I should be able to tell you whether it works or not. This trip is 580 miles. So by the end of this trip, I'd like to have that broken down to a cost per mile. And I am even going to as a factor, I am going to leave in the free supercharging that I just did. Let's see what happens. talking about how it releases the stress load. One of the features that I really like about this autopilot, and again, I do not have full self-driving, I just have the standard autopilot, is that it will go, like, it will stay in the lane you're in. It doesn't change lanes, it doesn't do those kind of things, but it will stay in the lane you're in, and it will slow down, keeping a distance between the car in front of you, keeping the proper distance between you and the car in front of you. So that's really nice. And one of the other parts of it is that it will go down and stop and hold, and then take off and go back to the speed that you've already set it at, which is very nice. Like I said, I am just in management mode. I'm not in doing mode, so that when I take a long trip, this trip is 10-11 hours, I don't feel as stressed or strained about it. I'm really just managing the plan more than I am actually immensely involved in manipulating the vehicle's controls. So what's really cool, much like in my flying days, that when I decide I want to manipulate the controls, and I'm ready to do that, I've got a reason to accelerate or something like that, then I do it. You know, I just take control. It's all up to me. But when I feel like, hey, I want to be pampered or spoiled by Jeeves, it doesn't work. Again, I'm not English. I can do that too, and that's interesting. Hey, so I'm here in Tupelo, Mississippi, the home of Elvis, and you can see Teslas are quite popular. Not. I gotta tell you, somehow the algorithm or the charging is kind of scaring me still a little bit. It keeps saying that I'm going under. I don't know if it's cold weather or what, but I'm gonna make sure when I get to Memphis, which is the last stop, that I get a complete full 300 miles. We'll see what happens. Well, we made it to Yellville, Arkansas, and Mountain Home. Just talking about evidence and substance. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Sorry, faith is, yep, that's it. Anyway, it was a long trip. I had to stay the night. That was, anyway, it was a long trip. A couple of details about it. So let's get to the good, or the hopeful part. The car performed great. The real problem is with being short. When I got there, it was about 5% off on the calculation whenever I did the algorithm. The next day I calculated that when I would get there, and I was down about I would have been at about 4%, so I would have arrived panicking. It was a good thing that I stopped for a day and then charged. At least that gave me an extra 60 miles, so that was the good, right? That for the most part, it was pretty accurate. I don't think it takes into account topography, so I was going uphill most of the way. So that was the bad, right? That there was still 5% that I was off, and 5% in the right circumstance would be bad. I got in the car this morning and for my trip home, and it said you would arrive in Memphis with 5%. Well, that's not good enough. So I ended up stopping and charging somewhere and getting breakfast, because I didn't know if the algorithm would be short 5%, right? So that's the first part. So that's the good and the bad. The ugly part, I'm not going to call it ugly. I'm just going to call it confusing, right? There's still a big question mark about how you go in the black hole of areas where there's supercharger scarcity. There were chargers up here, but they were much more slow in charging. We went from, if you're down to 5%, taking 50 minutes to charge your car fully, to taking a full 12 hours, which is what the non-Tesla superchargers do. So that's the confusing part. All things being said, it's exciting, right? One of the things that I like about new and innovative technology is that they give you a hope for tomorrow, right? And that's the part that brings me back to that verse. Like, faith is a hope of, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. When you have these things in the real world, it starts to remind you about the hope that you really believe in, right? Innovative tomorrow, well, my hope and my faith is in my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, which means that's the hope that will not disappoint. Hey, we'll see you next time on Cyberfied. I'm Jay Hendricks. Can't wait to talk some more. Let me know how you feel about scarcity, and we'll be back soon. Peace.